Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Como Live. Today is a kind of special Como Live. I have one of our horticulture staff here with me today, Ariel, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a horticulturist here at the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory. So I'm going to ask Ariel a few questions about what she's done before coming to Como, but also about her job here. So you can learn a little bit more about what it's like to work with all of these wonderful plants. So Ariel, I'll start with what led you to being a horticulturist here at the conservatory. Tell us a little bit about your story.
All right, happy to do so. It's a long story, so I'll try to keep it brief because I've spent the last 20 years working in public gardens, but I think that probably stems from my childhood. I grew up in a rural part of the Pacific Northwest where my family had a large backyard vegetable garden and 10 acres of woods and fields to run around and play in. So I grew up totally immersed in nature and loving plants. And my dad was a landscaper. So with a neighbor who was a landscape architect feeding jobs to my dad, the landscaper, there were many days where I could hitch a ride in my dad's truck and drive out to a job and see amazing private gardens that he was working on. So I grew up knowing a lot of plant names and really enjoying the horticulture that I saw all around me. So then that jumped off into a college career studying environmental education, and I worked for a number of years for the Park Service and Forest Service and the wilderness areas of the Pacific Northwest, and really loved alpine wildflower meadows and hiking in the backcountry and diving into learning about native plant communities there in the mountains. And then did the complete different thing in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, where I got to know rare and endangered Hawaiian plants, and then found myself in the nation's capital, where I landed my first official public gardens job at the U.S. Botanic Gardens, where I cared for the medicinal plant collection. So at every chapter of my life, I feel like I was really lucky to find amazing plants and have the opportunity to really dive deeper and learn about those plants.
Excellent. Yeah, and it sounds like you had a lot of very different plants that you were working with and had experiences with. So that's really awesome. Then how did you end up at Como with all this experience?
Well, we moved back, my husband and I moved back to this area, and I had visited Como when I was back seeing family. My husband grew up in Minnesota, so coming back to Minnesota was a homecoming for him. But whenever we were here visiting, we'd come to the conservatory and take in the gardens. And this was an important place to my godmother. She's Janesse Marie Anderson. The family donated the Frischmuth sculptures in her memory and her husband's memory. So this has always been a special place to our family, and I really looked for opportunities here whenever there was a job opening. But I worked at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum when we first got back here, and had a great time in their education department. Really felt like I got to know the plant communities of Minnesota, and the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum has amazing gardens as well. So another treasure right here in Minnesota to enjoy.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know, working with all of these plants and spending time with them, it must be, very rewarding, and there must be a lot of awesome aspects to it. But what would you say is your favorite part about your job here?
Probably the kind of people that plants attract. We have such amazing volunteers here, and educators and maintenance staff and zookeepers, and it's just a really dynamic group of people, and I'm really feeling lucky to be a part of the team that works here at Como.
Then I have to ask, on the other end of that spectrum, I mean, everybody has something about their job that maybe they don't like, but maybe there's a viewer watching who might be interested in working at Public Garden or a place like the conservatory here. What would you say is your least favorite part of the job?
Well, I think for me, the least favorite part is hot days like today, where I know that we have a group of plants that's scheduled for a chemical application. So today it's the chrysanthemums. They need to be treated with a plant growth regulator. So I put on these chemical resistant gloves and protective eyewear, and then a respirator so that I'm not inhaling any of this stuff. But the worst part is the Tyvek suit. And you get really hot tromping around with one of these on when you're out there in the greenhouse spraying chemicals. So when we do a chemical application, I think that's probably the boring, unpleasant, least fun job. But we don't do it very often, so.
I can imagine, especially in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
When it's, mixes of 100 degrees
Mm-hmm.
you're in there spraying, yeah.
Yep.
But that's something that is important to keeping the plants healthy, I should say,
Yeah.
here at the conservatory. So everything that you do here and all your different tasks that you have taking care of the plants, what do you think is one thing that somebody might find surprising about your job?
I think people are often surprised when I talk to them about the conservatory to learn that we grow all of our plants right here on site in our greenhouses. So next time you're at the conservatory visiting, after you circle through the Palm Dome and look at the North Garden and Sunken Garden, head over to the Bonsai Pavilion and you'll see a door with a little window in it, and you can peek through that window right into our production greenhouses. And in those greenhouses, we produce all the plant material that supplies the rooms of the conservatory and also for the Sunken Garden flower shows. And so I think that people are surprised to find out that we're back there starting seeds, taking cuttings, keeping a beautiful orchid collection going, as well as palm trees for the backup material that go in to replace things as needed in all of our permanent conservatory collections.
Yeah, that's a really good point. These plants don't just pop up out of nowhere, and especially the Sunken Garden that we're in today, with the flower shows changing throughout the season. I can imagine there's a lot of behind the scenes work, and as we've seen on Como Live too, we've shown some of that goes on. So that I think is a very surprising aspect of what we do here, definitely. So thinking of the viewers at home and somebody who might want to work at a public garden, going back to that, what's a piece of advice you would give to someone who might be pursuing a career, even if they don't have any experience at all, to someone who might be studying to do that?
I think my best advice is just love plants, because you get passionate about a subject, you love plants, you're going to find some really interesting opportunities to work with those plants that you love. And it could be in the area of research, it could be in education, it could be in production, could be in public gardens, but loving plants and being open to the opportunities that come along with that is my best advice.
That is good advice, definitely. So speaking of plants, I have to ask, what is your maybe favorite plant at the conservatory? Or just in general, what's your favorite plant?
Yeah, it's hard because I get passionate about something and then I learn everything I can about that particular plant. And so I think that my latest obsession is carnivorous plants, and maybe you tuned into that Como Live. I'm still obsessed with Mexican butterworts. I've probably spent my entire COVID stimulus check purchasing and curating my own personal collection at home.
That's awesome.
So if you're at the conservatory, check out our little carnivorous plant display. And I'm hoping that sometime we'll be able to expand a garden of carnivorous plants outside the conservatory, maybe on our rooftop gardens. So I'm searching for that spot where we could showcase some of our Minnesota carnivores.
Excellent.
Because it's a really interesting group.
They are super interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, great. Thank you so much, Ariel, for sharing your story and talking a little bit about the work that you do here at the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory. I want to say to everybody watching, if a question pops up that you might have about what it's like to work at a public garden, or being a horticulturalist, please feel free to leave a comment or a question in the comments, and we can get back to you after this video as best we can. So again, thank you to the viewers watching at home. Have a great day.